Welcome back to the Podgasm Marketing Podcast, the only podcast in the world that shows new podcasters how to create a clear, compelling brand message so you can attract more of the right people and grow your show faster. If you're a newer podcaster and are struggling to grow your show, this podcast is for you. Today I'm going to show you the number one thing every new podcaster must do if you want your podcast to succeed. There are so many things that new podcasters do to get ready to launch their podcast. They plan everything out, or the best they can. They buy all the equipment. They spend a bunch of money. They put in a bunch of time, and they get this thing wrong, and they literally set up their own show for failure. And it happens every single day. So what I'm going to show you today is how you can avoid becoming one of those podcasts. I'm Brian Fleming, the host of the Podgasm Marketing Podcast, where I show you how to craft a clear, compelling message that will attract the right kinds of listeners you want to your podcast so your podcast will grow faster. If you want more downloads and more listeners and more engagement, and to be able to monetize your podcast faster, take this advice today. Do not overlook this. And by the way, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go download the free Speak Your Listener's Language PDF. It's 3 pages, it has a few tips on it, and it's going to show you a very simple copy and paste, easy way to say what you do on your podcast so more of the right people will notice it and want to click on your episodes and listen to them. Again, if you don't have this, you are setting yourself up for failure. So go grab that right now. There's a link in the description, or you can go to podgasmshow.com and download it from there. I want you to think about your podcast like building a house. Imagine if you just rolled up on some random land and you had a bunch of wood, the tools, everything you needed, and you just started constructing your house right there in the grass. And then you got the whole thing up. All that time, all that effort, all that money, but your house is at huge risk. Do you know why? If you know anything about building a house, you know that before you can build the house, you have to have a strong foundation laid in order to build it on, so it doesn't fall over and kill you or anyone else. Again, imagine doing all that work building a house, everything that goes into that, the wood, the drywall, all the labor, all the equipment, all the cost, and then you didn't have a slab laid down of concrete. You didn't have a solid foundation. That is what the average new podcaster does when they're starting their podcast. They get all the equipment. They get all the time and energy and money they put into it, the effort. They do all the things. They sign up for all the services. They get ready, and they don't have a solid foundation. And what is that solid foundation? That solid foundation is a clear and compelling brand message that will hook the attention of the right listeners, the people you're trying to reach, so that they will want to click on your episode titles and listen to your podcast. They need to be able to notice you, and then they need to want to click on your episodes so that they know they're going to get something out of you that they're trying to get, some sort of benefit, or helping them to avoid some sort of disaster they're trying to avoid. Because look, if you don't have a clear and compelling brand message written out, you're just going to confuse people. And the right people who you want to listen to your podcast, they're going to scroll right by you, and you're going to get frustrated when you see nothing growing, when you don't see your downloads increasing, when you're not getting any engagement, when you're not monetizing or making any money. It's going to be frustrating, and you're going to get mad because you're struggling because you didn't do the most important thing first. There is absolutely zero reason to start a podcast or even buy a microphone if you have not already clarified your podcast brand messaging. It is literally the foundation of the house that is your podcast, of the skyscraper that is your podcast, that is being built. So here's the deal. If you get your brand messaging strong from the start, you have a very solid and reliable foundation upon which you can build your podcast, not just into a house, build it into a mansion, or again, maybe even build it into a skyscraper. You never know where this thing's going to go. And your message matters, because if it didn't, you wouldn't be putting all the time and money and effort into all that is required to grow a podcast. But if you're missing that foundation, you're just waiting for the day that your skyscraper starts to look like the Leaning Tower of Pisa and it's about to fall over, all because you messed something up in the beginning that was major. So I want to ask you, what is your brand message? Do you know how to write a brand message? That's why this whole podcast exists. I don't teach everything about podcasting. I teach how to create powerful, compelling, and clear brand messaging that will help you grow your podcast, because I'm a word nerd. I'm a guy who knows how to write things that get people to do things, to take certain desired actions. And if you want proof, just look at my podcast. Look at the Podgasm Marketing Podcast. I'm doing this for new and growing podcasters. I'm living what I'm teaching you to do. And so if you like what I'm doing, if it's compelling to you, you can see that obviously it's working. Do you struggle to write compelling and effective brand messaging that gets your podcast noticed? Do you want more people to listen to your podcast, but you struggle to talk about it in a way that grabs their attention and keeps it? If your podcast marketing messaging is not up to par, you are losing listeners. But maybe you don't know anything about copywriting and writing marketing messaging and such. Fortunately for you, I've been doing it for over 17 years. Do you want me to write your podcast marketing messaging for you in a clear, powerful, and compelling way that grabs your ideal listeners' attention and makes them want to listen to your podcast over and over again? Each month I take on a small, limited number of clients and rewrite their podcast marketing messaging for them. Yes, I do all the hard work for you, and you just get to enjoy the benefits of it without any of the headaches when I'm done. If you want me to craft clear, distinct, and compelling marketing messaging that grows your podcast for you so you can attract more listeners consistently, send me an email right now at podgasmshow@gmail.com. There's a link in the show notes. And put the word consult in the subject line to check my availability.